A lot has gone into North America's cow-like apathy, the slovenly sloth-likeness that we've turned into. We've been decadent. We've had it really good for a long time, and that always leads to weakness. We've been spoiled our children. We haven't gone through adversity. People don't appreciate things. I think the most important thing of a cornucopia of factors, and I want Dr. Levine to talk about this because I've read his writings and really think it's very piercing, and right along my own research just from studying this and watching it and being part of it, the process of awakening people, that Madison Avenue, and I've read Bernays' 2 books, I've read many other books by the big modern fathers of advertising and propaganda, and most people know this, but they don't consciously put it into their decision-making every day, and people don't think about it. But most people know that Madison Avenue learned about 100 years ago to make you feel inadequate. So they choose a body type, on average, that women don't look like. For thousands of years, the full-bodied, voluptuous figure was the most beautiful in every culture. It's what I like. It's what men like. I don't like what modern porn has done in a lot of ways, but in one respect, it has brought back the real figure men like. You know, the market has shown they don't want some skinny heroin head. But Madison Avenue chose that because then women will feel inadequate and they could sell them all the cosmetics, the drugs, the diets. Edward Bernays, they had women with cigarettes at rallies. They paid them to smoke cigarettes at meetings where women were trying to get voting, suffrage, their voting rights. And so and it was a good cause overall because they were smoking cigarettes and the cigarette manufacturers funded that. They tied it into fake rebellion. But bottom line, they make you feel inadequate, men, women. Then they can give you a false image of what it is to be a strong man or woman, which actually makes you feel even less empowered. And then people just keep doing more and more of what the system says. And so people don't see themselves as leaders. They don't see themselves as trailblazers. Our role models aren't inventors and civil rights activists and scientists and trailblazers and explorers as America's icons had been previously. Now it's some drug addict athlete, or it's some drug addict actress, or it's some the image makers know what they've done, and they've told you if you're not 22 and a blonde, or you're not a 25-year-old basketball star, you have no worth. And the children are all given false dreams of being something that 1 out of 10,000 are going to be able to do, or maybe 1 out of 1,000,000 in some cases, to be a movie star. And so people feel pathetic about themselves, so how could they stand up and be leaders? Going back to Dr. Levine. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's 2 really insidious forces working at the same time. One is that there's what you're talking about, just kind of making people feel bad about their basic humanity, pathologizing, medicalizing, diseasing, doing all these kinds of things to make people feel that who they are is something problematic. One thing happens off of that is that there's a lot of money to be made off of that, certainly in my profession, and I can go through that with you. There's also what ends up happening is as folks are making money, the powers to be get to have a more kind of compliant population who feels lousy about themselves. So it's in the total interest of the kind of corporate authoritarian kind of society that we have here that gets spread, and that's why it will not be confronted in any kind of on any kind of mass media. I mean, for the obvious thing is that they're being supported by commercials by all of these kinds of different companies that are selling it. But on another level, it won't be confronted by any of the powers to be that are on top of this whole hierarchy here, because at some level they want a population not really feeling too good about themselves. That's not a population that's going to rebel. Is this not a corporate psychological dictatorship we're living under? Well, it has been for a pretty long time. I'll give you one little story here. The father of the American Psychiatric Association, literally, I mean, if you took a look at their image, that adorns the American Psychiatric Association seal, it's a guy named Dr. Benjamin Rush. He's signed the Declaration of Independence, and so they're real proud of him. Well, what this guy did was, in addition to many other crazy treatments that killed a lot of people, I mean, including George Washington. Yeah. I mean, one of his illnesses that he came up with was something called anarchia, which he defined as, quotes, an excessive passion for liberty. and it constituted for him a form of insanity. So for him, certainly anybody who at the time who was upset about the American Revolution going in the way of a more centralized, totalitarian kind of society that we've ended up with here today was that anybody who confronted that, they had some kind of disease called anarchia. And throughout the whole history of my profession, you'll see that. And so today, I mean, more and more people, I used to say this, and guys like you who were interviewing me, they think I'm making this up, that I'm being sarcastic, but more and more people are hip to the idea that there actually is an illness today in my business called oppositional defiant disorder. ODD, and this is not an arcane diagnosis. It's given often, and kids are behaviorally modified.
No. John Gartner on the phone was basically telling me I had this.
That you had ODD?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I'm and schizophrenic.
Well, let me tell your audience, I would doubt that there's one member of your audience there who does not have the symptoms of ODD. I sure as heck am proud to have it. I mean, some of the symptoms that they call an illness are, 1, often argues with adults. 2, often refuses to comply with adults. I mean, often gets upset and angry with adults. I mean, these are the symptoms of an illness, and that's the one of the more obvious so-called psychiatric, so-called illnesses that's clearly a form of rebellion. But if you take a look at almost everything else that has been labeled as a illness or a pathology, or throughout the history of my business, it's really either an overt or a covert form of rebellion. And of course, there's much more money to be made by labeling an illness, especially nowadays when you drug everything, and pharmaceutical companies are making a ton off of people's problems and off of people's rebellions. But it's also in the benefit for the whole culture and society. If you could drug every rebellious kid out there, if you could drug everybody out there who's depressed because their life is miserable here because there's no freedom, there's no justice, there's no autonomy. If you can drug all of them, well, not only is there a ton of money to be made out of it, but you quash rebellion.
Absolutely. Now, pulling back from this, I want to get into solutions from your deep research on these subjects, but I also wanted to just have the parallel to the pimp game. It's the same way a pimp breaks a whore. And, they ask the pimps on television, what do you pay your girls? I pay them nothing. They're lucky if I give them a Happy Meal or some Kentucky Fried chicken. And these women are just groveling and begging to these guys and worshiping them and saying, I want to do more. And you look at the way the government and all its corruption and all the bad things it does, it's the authority, it's the officials. We are now the servants of the government. It's literally the government is a pimp and we are now their whore.
Well, it seems that way. I mean, people are getting less and less and less, and whatever they've got is being threatened to be taken away from them, and people are just reacting like passively. I guess that's the way it is. I guess that's what always happens. So that kind of psychology that you're describing it seems like it's happening.
Well, how do we recreate 1776 in a peaceful way? Because the media always demonizes protests, puts them in free speech zones, hires provocateurs on record to engage in violence in front of news cameras so they can then attack the peaceful crowd. We know that's how they're keeping people from getting out on the streets and involved, and they admit they're spying on everybody now. So there's this overall chilling effect. Somebody like myself, and I never thought of myself as particularly a tough guy or even rebellious, I don't want to be a slave. I don't want my children to be a slave. I know the great value is property rights and freedom and all of this. And I know an Orwellian police state when I see it because I've studied a lot of history. Early on, I found it to be entertaining is the reason I got deeply into history, even in high school. But now those that know history are not doomed to repeat it, I guess, the reverse of what Lord Acton said. So expanding on that, what are some of the solutions you've found to get people who are in apathy or who are in learned helplessness or who are in cognitive dissonance to unwrap their minds from this corruption and start standing up? I mean, my best experience is to teach them. We have this hero image of an Arnold Schwarzenegger in the movies or a Clint Eastwood fixing it all. John Wayne, one guy comes in and does it. But really, it's small decisions and valuing yourself and not making them let you feel insecure and pathetic and setting your priorities and helping others. I have found that that's how you can build people with small steps up to see their power.